trouble with balancing your hormones, with your mood, with not being able to lose weight, with maybe potentially an abnormal menstrual cycle, or for guys having not enough libido, not enough motivation, not enough drive. You've gone to the doctor and they've told you that potentially your hormone tests look normal. You've tried some traditional approaches, and yet you're still not losing the weight. You're still very moody or irritable. You still don't have a lot of motivation or drive, potentially hot flashes, unwanted facial hair, or male pattern baldness, or sweating, or acne. And you know that something's missing. Today I want to talk to you about hormonal imbalances and the genetic component. So the genetic component, what does that mean? It means that we inherit particular potentials from our parents in terms of how well do we detoxify, how well do we fight off infection, how well do we regenerate tissues, how well do we produce energy, how well do we make and break our hormones, how well do we make neurotransmitters, how well do we deal with stress. And when you are the hormonal imbalance type, when you have inflammation and epigenetic factors like stress and demands and relationships and infections, then you have a weak link in your chain that's going to break, where it causes you these hormonal imbalances. And you're not necessarily going to see it on the blood tests. First of all, the doctors are going to run blood tests, and those blood tests are going to be incomplete. They're not going to have a lot of the markers that we like to look at in terms of oxidative stress, absorption, inflammation, immune dysregulation, mineral balance, and that's just the basics when it comes down to a CBC. What happens when you do a genetic test like a 23andMe, which is very incomplete nowadays? Doctors are only looking for MTHFR, or even something called COMT if you're lucky, but they don't look at that perfect storm, and that's what this video is about, the perfect storm. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you about two major players in the environmental world that can really be causing you major hormonal imbalances. And the first one is going to be hydrocarbons and PCPs. So these are things that we're going to see in plastics, in fuels, in environmental toxin air, in water and food supplies, dry cleaning, and gasolines. All of these PCPs and hydrocarbons are known to be what's called endocrine disruptors. So what that means in English is when you get exposed to these small environmental particles, what happens is they impact enzymes that help to make and break your hormones. And if your enzyme system is already imbalanced in the first place, meaning mom passed you down and altered an efficient gene, and dad passed you down and altered an efficient gene, you are already having challenges in those areas before you even get exposed to the environmental toxins. And then when you get exposed to those environmental toxins, it's that perfect storm. And then you go see your doctor, and they don't even run a genetic test on you. They don't run a toxic profile. They don't look at your hormones. And maybe they look at some of these things, but it's like looking at the ocean and seeing some of the ocean. You're not looking at all of the ocean, because at the end of the day, if you want a complete picture of A, what's going on, and B, what do you do about it, you need a complete picture. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you about hydrocarbons and PCPs. Those are only two major epigenetic environmental triggers that, if you have the possible genetic susceptibilities that overlap with a hormonal imbalance type, you are going to have that perfect storm. You are going to have irregular cycles potentially. You are going to have aromatization for guys, and you're going to be a little bit more emotional. You're not going to have libido. You're not going to have arousal. You're not going to be able to lose the weight. You're going to be moody. You're going to have unwanted hairs where you don't want them. You're going to have challenges, and you need to understand this. So the other epigenetic factor that I wanted to talk to you about, which is almost ubiquitous, and when I say that, it means it's everywhere, is inflammation. And when you hear the word inflammation, you have to think about immune dysregulation. You can't have one without the other. When you have inflammation, by definition, it's an inflammatory response that contains your immune system signaling system and cytokines and different factors that help communicate, that turn on and turn off genes. And if your genes are already slow to begin with, and they really weren't turned on very good in the first place, then they're going to be even further reduced, and you're going to have even more challenges. So some of the key enzymes that we look for is CYP enzymes. The CYP enzymes, the cytochrome P450, they're really important in phase 1 detox. So sometimes we may have some polymorphisms, meaning our parent passed us down the altered gene, and we're going to go down the unhealthy pathway of estrogen metabolism, and that could make yourself more likely to estrogen cancers, not just the BRCA gene, but having some of these CYP genes with the environmental triggers. And it really requires that kind of thinking. You need someone who's going to be open-minded, that can put the puzzle pieces together and look not just at your blood work and say it's normal, but look at your environmental triggers, look at your subjective complaints, and look at your genetic test to actually customize a recovery program. It's almost like having in your boat and you're going fishing and you have like that sonic detection device that tells you where all the fish are. You drop that line, you know you're going to have an increased likelihood of catching something because you're not guessing. That's what looking at your genetic type is all about, and matching that with your symptoms and matching that with your objective testing, but making sure you're getting the right testing. So the CYP enzymes are very important. We look at that with all our clients. Obviously, you've probably heard of COMT, which is very important in phase 2 of clearing out your hormones, but so is glucuronidation, so is glutathione conjugation, so is sulfation. These are things that we need to look at your genes to be able to tell you, hey, Mrs. Jones, you have a challenge over here, and no one's telling you about that, and potentially that's what you're not doing to impact your hormones effectively. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So the other enzymes that we look at is SRD5A and SRD5B. Those are really important, that help produce cortisol. So if those enzymes aren't working very well, and you put on the epigenetic perfect storm of inflammatory triggers, now all of a sudden you're not going to make the hormones that you need to make, and you're not going to deal with stress very well. So now you're not only having hormonal imbalances, but you're not getting up in that fight or flight mechanism, and maybe you're always anxious, or maybe you have no motivation or drive and you just crash as soon as you hear a stressor and you have very little energy. If those are things that are going on with you, then why don't investigate that? And that's what these videos are for. So make sure, number one, you like or comment or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Number two, make sure you go over to yourgenetictype.com and you take the mini quiz. It's a free quiz to let you know, are you a hormonal imbalance type? Or maybe you're not, and you have other types that are really overlapping with the hormonal imbalance type. And then third, we'll send you follow-up information and create lots of great free tools for you to be able to learn, how do I fix this? What tests do I do? What gene SNPs do I look for? What epigenetic testing could I do? Or what environmental triggers are creating these perfect storms? And most importantly, what can I do about it? And in this case, with hydrocarbons and PCPs, you really want to minimize your exposures to plastics and gases and fuels. You also want to support your immune system and inflammatory pathways. You also want to get proper genetic testing and proper hormonal testing. And then you want to put all the puzzle pieces together and put your life back on track. So hopefully that made a lot of sense. That is the hormonal imbalance type. It creates that perfect storm with your genetics and your epigenetics, causing the chain to break and causing your hormonal imbalances. And I just want to tell you, you're not crazy. Your doctor's just not doing a complete workup for you, and there are answers and there are solutions. So I look forward to ending your hormonal imbalance nightmare. Have an awesome day.